Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's NAC at Home program. My name is Dawn Lilly. For those of you who are not familiar with the National Arts Club, we're a 501c3 nonprofit based in New York City with a mission to stimulate, foster, and promote public interest in the arts. Annually, the club offers more than 150 free programs to the public, including exhibitions, theatrical, dance, and musical performances, lectures, and readings. For more information about the National Arts Club, you can visit us at nationalartsclub.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Tonight's program is being taped, and if you would like to look at it again or recommend it to others, it should be up within 48 hours on the NAC YouTube. We will also welcome questions at the end of the program, and if you will put them in the question box, Laura Daly will handle them and you will get answers to them. Tonight's program, Did You Read a Dance Last Night, prompts another answer from me, actually, which is, yes, Virginia, there is a way to write down dance. And dances have actually been notated for centuries. Tonight's program is presented in cooperation with Ohio State University, which has a highly regarded dance program and where the extension of the Dance Notation Bureau of New York is also based. Mara Frazier is an assistant professor and curator of dance at the university's libraries, in particular the Special Collections and the Research Institute. She supports teaching and research in Labanotation, dance, and movement. Mara has a BA and an MFA in dance from Ohio State and is a certified teacher of Labanotation. Valarie Williams, professor in the dance department, collaborates on artistic projects that produce critical conversations connecting scholarship in the arts with solutions for global social change. She performed with the Dallas Opera and the Sharia Dance Company and toured with the Lincoln Center Institute for 4 years for their programs. She's the recipient of grants from many private, public, and government foundations to both stage and notate dancers. She holds a BFA from Juilliard, an MFA and PhD from Texas Women's University, and is a certified professional notator. It's a pleasure to hand the program over to Mara and Valarie.
our dancers are here to answer or demonstrate anything for you, or give you a little more information.
So, Mara, so are we ready for the Q&A? Is that what you're telling me?
I think we're ready. I think
awesome. Lots of questions.
Okay.
Okay, so, and this is open up to the dancers and you and Valarie. As a learning tool and as a way of preservation, how do you think notation compares to filming a dance?
Well, film gives you, or video gives you, one instance and one performance of a moment in time as it's embodied in one particular person's or human's experience. And so those are all valuable and extremely critical things to have in the archive when looking at different dances, when preserving dances, when thinking about restaging them. And it's also, really good to know just what was going on in different performers' body types and what they look like. But one of the benefits that you have from looking at it a little more objectively, as it's represented in symbols and squares and triangles and lines, is that you get an idea of what the movement is that is separate from a particular performer's way of executing that movement. And so those are two very different things. They're both viable and they both contribute to the canon of dance, but they just allow us to have a little bit different type of experience. Cam always has a good answer for that. Cam, do you want to come say something?
I would say that film, it does hold, but as they said, it holds one performance. And a notated score, you can make notes, you can make edges, and it also has many efforts. So in a lot of scores, you'll see effort symbolized of where you needed to be strong and when you needed to be soft. And in a lot of different people's bodies, that cannot really be clear in film. And also it depends on when the film is taken. And we have seen how cameras can go up and down through time. So this is really a concrete way of seeing what should be in the dancer's body and what really is the choreographer's intent, especially when they're not here anymore.
It's almost like notating a musical score.
Yes, absolutely. It is a lot like a score and a musical score. And from a curator's perspective, I just want to add that, kind of like what Cam just said, that cameras change over time. We're finding that there's such challenges with access and preservation of old formats. So all the video that we took on VHS through the years, 80s, 90s, much of it is now deteriorating. And so there's this race to digitize that video before it loses too much quality. But then what you have digitized, where do you keep that? And what do you do with it? First, it was put onto a disc, and then that disc, what do we play discs on now? My computer doesn't have a disc player. So there's that kind of challenge.
All right, another question is, for dances where there was no filming and you're trying to preserve, and at that point it's almost, I don't want to say hearsay, but it's like a game of telephone. How does one approach notation to preserve a piece like that?
That's such a good question. Yes.
Yeah. So that begins to be really tricky. You at that point you're really recording one person or two or three people's restagers' memories at that point in time and how they experienced it, and then really their body as an archive and how it gets passed on. And so if as a notator you're really interested in notating that particular version of that dance and that moment of time, that's extremely valuable and viable for the next generation. But you really have to be aware that it's removed from the original, and it's not quite the same as the original. A project that Mara and I are working on with the George Balanchine Foundation was just approved. We'll be out with Paul Bowes, the video archives director, and we will be staging a 58-second section from the original Agon. Billy Mahoney, who passed away 2 weeks ago, was the original notator there with Stravinsky and George Balanchine, and she notated the 58 seconds of the Galliard, which has gone missing in the mist of time. And so, so we had the original pencil draft here, and the George Balanchine Foundation is working with us, and we'll be staging it on 2 dancers from the New York City Ballet, May 13, 14, 15, 16. So come to Lincoln Center on those days to the Rose Building.
Another question is, how long does it take to read and then adapt a notation score? Because looking at them, it's it's not a language based in any experience that anyone has.
Yes. I would say that it depends. It gets faster as you go along. Just like learning when you're first becoming literate as a child, and you have to piece together the sounds of a word, sound it out is how I learned. I don't think they teach that anymore, but I was taught to sound out the word and then put it back together. And so there's a little bit of that with the notation where it's like, okay, where's my arm? Where's my supports? What am I standing on? What are all the other details? And then how does it flow? So we really like to work together. A lot of times when we are reading, that's part of why we stage together, because different things come in at different times.
Yeah, so when we were learning steps, we learned it over our winter break. Maura and I spent about a week together in the studio for about 5 hours a day. And then we taught that whole entire section that's on the floor via Zoom to our dancers. They were all at home and they had to quarantine before they could come. And so just to give you an idea, like that 9-minute dance took us about a week of 5-hour days.
Right.
And then rooms was really exciting because there was one section that from early days had just had one irregularity in how it was paginated, like the numbers on the pages. So it took us some going back to archives and finding first draft, second draft, final draft. So it actually took us longer to figure out rooms in that way. And then once we got the pages sorted out, then it was probably about the same amount of time, maybe 20 hours of both of us just digging into the score.
Is notation, is it a universal language? For example, could you use it to notate a classical ballet piece, say a Graham piece or an improvised piece of dance?
Yeah, so we really believe strongly in understanding the cultural and historical and in many cases religious significance of the dances. And while certainly a forward step can be a forward step, in ballet, it's done a little differently. In Graham, it's done with the toe heel first. In the Ghanaian African dances, it's done with the whole foot. And so you really have to be cognizant of, the culture, the future readers, and your own biases as a notator as you begin to think about how you can notate different genres and different styles. Certainly people like Judy Van Zyl, who are steeped in ethnography and who spent decades studying Polynesian dance, her beautiful renditions of Hawaiian dance and hula are just unprecedented. And then, of course, it's very different than, of course, what you saw here with the understanding of the Graham contraction, the Graham hand. And so some things that are more glossarized and maybe known to those of us who live in that Western theatrical world, we can maybe pick it up a little more quickly.
Because I would assume as notation moves forward, it's somewhat similar to the English language. There are always new words that are added, new phrases that are added, because people just decide to express themselves differently. And so I would assume notation would eventually be able to deal with equally successfully Graham movement, African movement, or any kind of movement at all.
Yeah, about half of this class this year we got permission to read some of Jaquel Knight's choreography. The Dance Notation Bureau had just notated works by Jaquel, by Megan Thee Stallion, and by Cardi B. And so, and of course, Lynn Weber, who did a lot of the notation, said that she had to make up new body parts because they weren't actually in our glossary.
Yes.
So yes, as anything evolves, definitely you get new words or new symbols.
Right. I know that many of the audience were disappointed that they could not see the notation at the same time they were watching the dance, but we totally understand because of licensing and rights that there's just a limit to what you can share publicly. But that brings me to another question, which is, when a dance is notated, is it the choreographer who normally does it, or is it somebody else? And who ultimately has the right to the notated work? Is it shared, or how? Yeah.
All right. Well, the notation is complex enough that it's a profession of its own. So it takes years of study. Val's a certified notator, so approved to create these full scores of works and does that. And it took a lot of years. And so the choreographers generally don't notate their own works. And the ideal situation is the choreographer is making the work while the notator is in the room, so that the notator can understand all about what the choreographer is saying, what they're intending to do. And what was the other part of that question? It was just who does it? Or was it
Who ultimately
the right?
owns the right? Is it a co-ownership with the choreographer and the notator, or just the person who did the notation?
The choreographer owns the rights to the dance. And then Seymour, help me with this.
Yeah, and in the United States, the choreographer continues to own the rights to the notation.
Mhm.
But in Europe, the choreographer holds the rights to the dance and the notator holds the rights to the score. So it's very different depending on whether you're here in the United States or you're in Europe.
Yeah, but it's better in Europe with that setup anyway, because every theater takes money right off the top, which does not happen in this country. So it's not a bad thing.
Right.
It's not a bad thing. Let's see. Okay, so your dance students, who by the way are fabulous, brava. They all understand or beginning to understand notation.
Yes, they all read.
All right, so in the dance world, dance students of today or professional dancers of today, how many do you think really know anything about if they could they read a notated score? Or is this
right?
I don't know, but
Ours that are going out there can.
Right. Is this a skill that's just is going to be coming up with this new generation?
It's hard to say. I mean, certainly here we have on average 100 dance majors in our program, and so it's about 25 a year. And so when they graduate, they can go away and they learn how to use some of the symbols for memory aid for their own choreographic endeavors, and then they can read some aspects of the scores as they leave. But it really is highly unusual. I think maybe about 40 to 60 programs in the nation still do this. In France, there is quite a bit. It's still taught at all the conservatories, all the national conservatories, and we are going over on Friday and we'll be at the National Superior Conservatory and doing notation classes with them. And then China has had a great interest in training its teachers in notation. So we've been over there quite a bit up until the pandemic, teaching notation and training their teachers throughout their university system as well.
And we were talking.
Everyone is learning the same notation system at this point. Okay.
Yeah, we were talking with Dawn about this the other day, about how for a symphonic orchestra, you would never show up. The musicians would never show up without their scores and without having practiced the the music, learned it, and then but the culture in dance has always been an oral embodied tradition of passing down dances from body to body. And I think the notation only helps with that, but it's not part of that culture of how we do things generally. But then the stagers will come into the studio with the score and work with dancers. People see the value when you do it, but yeah, I would say not most of them.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, this was absolutely fabulous. A little rough on the sound going in, but then it just resolved itself and it was perfect. What we needed to see and know that we accomplished. So it was fabulous. So thanks to Mara and Valarie and all you grand dancers from Ohio State. Yay! It was
Thank
really
you all.
very, very interesting and very informative. And you all stay safe now.
Thank you. Take care.
And I want to thank everybody in the audience for your support and attendance. This was a great event. The website for the notation library is in the chat, so find out more by going to that link. And this event is being recorded and will be on the National Art Club's YouTube channel. Probably by end of tomorrow. So with that, again, thanks to everyone, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening.
Thank you. Good night.